In 5, 4, 3. And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and joining us as they do for the MGoBlog Roundtable every single week is our good friends from MGoBlog, Brian Cook, Seth Fisher, and of course, Craig Ross. Good morning, fellas. How are you?
Morning.
Good.
Yes. So, listen, one of those weeks where, a lot is packed in, starting off with 13 Wolverines being drafted to the NFL draft, a record as far as the Maize Blue is concerned, and feeling like, whether it's J.J. McCarthy at quarterback or Mikey St. Ristel and Junior Colson, I think you got a couple of guys who are going to be in contention for offensive end or defensive rookie of the year. I'm curious your big draft takeaways. We have to dive too deep into the NFL side of things, more on the Michigan side of things. What you took away from the draft last week, starting with you, Brian Cook.
Well, it was just nice to, every time a Michigan guy came up, Nick Saban was like, I love this guy. He's the best guy. I wish he was on my team, but I retired because I couldn't get these guys. It's just enjoyable to be the national champion. And then every time a Michigan guy comes up, Rich Eisen is like, the national champion, Michigan Wolverines. So, yeah, it was a good time. And I feel like, I thought maybe a couple more guys would go, but it's the thing that stands out to me is that there's a guy named, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Bill Radget. I'll tweet his. I put it in an unverified veracity last week, but it's a comparison of recruiting class rankings versus talent in the NFL draft over the past few years. And Michigan and Iowa are the best two teams in the country at developing talent. The difference is, of course, is that Michigan has recruiting classes that are in the area that if you overdevelop talent, you can win a national title, and Iowa does not. Mm-hmm. But the overall takeaway, I think, from that weekend is that whatever Michigan had going on under Jim Harbaugh, and hopefully will continue under Sharon Moore, is player development, player development, player development, player development.
Yeah, I've been saying this for a long time, subject to some perhaps reasonable criticism, but I feel like there's lots of guys out there who can play. Lots of guys out there, and they many of them aren't appropriately evaluated. Many of them are still in growth cycles. Some of them have already reached their peak and so are overvalued. And Michigan has done a really good job of finding guys with upside and then developing them. And you see that, Michigan doesn't have any 5-star guys or very few 5-star guys on their team, yet they're still beating teams. They did this year with, a lot of them. I think Michigan had 1 5-star guy this year. Ohio State had like 17, so it isn't that. I mean, I'm not saying that it's irrelevant. I am saying that there are ways to be a success if you find the right guys with upside and develop them. And that's what Harbaugh has been able to do. And hopefully Sharon and his staff will continue to be able to do it.
Seth Fisher?
Yeah, man. So I keep a database of Michigan recruits going all the way back to 1990 when I think the earliest times we can get get their rankings. And so I can track different coaches against each other. And one of the things I track is like who gets in the NFL, right? So Rich Rodriguez, 19% of his players made it to the end, signed an NFL contract, made it past spring, right? Gary Moeller, 32%, Lloyd Carr, 33%, Brady Hoke, 36%, but he had the benefit of Jim Harbaugh coaching a lot of his players. Jim Harbaugh, out of the players who finished their careers in college, 60% have made the NFL.
That's amazing.
It is incredible. And we're talking about the same levels of talent, right? Like you're just comparing apples to apples when you talk about Michigan classes, because Carr recruited the same way that Harbaugh did, maybe even a little better. And Hoke actually recruited as well as Carr. But Harbaugh I mean, he's just, the amount 60%. You come to Michigan, there's a greater chance of going to the NFL than not. That is insane. That is. I don't care if you're Georgia or Alabama. That's the kind of levels we're talking about. And those guys were heading for the NFL when they came out of high school. Michigan's getting, Mikey Sainristil, 5'9", who when he was 7 months old, he was running ahead of the political disasters, and his dad was trying to save his life, and now here he is. That's the guys he's finding. So, I mean, the player development at Michigan is incredible. The player scouting at Michigan is incredible, and that's the Harbaugh legacy. Is he didn't just win titles; he produced NFL guys, and that's something you can still sell to people.
Yeah, you gotta get guys to buy into that vision. It was driving me nuts to hear these commentators call JJ the biggest risk of the quarterbacks at the top of the draft because he just didn't throw that much. He just didn't throw that much. It's like, well, but when he did throw, he was effective, and they won a championship, and that was part of the formula, right? How they won the games shouldn't. I mean, if it's the talent, the requisite talent is there. The big arm, the leadership, the intangibles. He has all the tools. The only thing he doesn't have is that attempt stat. That's all he doesn't have. With these other guys.
Yeah, you know what's funny? If you cut out the fourth quarter, he has just as many attempts as any of these guys. And if you cut out, and even with Michigan like running the ball every single play against Penn State, and right, like even with some of these insane games where Michigan was just running the ball like madmen, he still had just as many attempts per play as all these guys in the first three quarters. What he doesn't have is the fourth quarter, because why? His teams were winning.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's your problem, is that like he didn't throw enough interceptions in the first three quarters, so his team's ahead by 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns, and they bring in the backups.
Yeah, I'm with Dan Orlovsky on this one. I think JJ is going to be one of the favorites for offensive rookie of the year. On the other side of the ball, man, a sneaky pick. Mikey is going to play. He's going to play a lot. I think he's going to make an impact right away. But a sneaky guy, I think, is Junior Colson in the third round. I told this story on the air earlier this week, but I can share it now here on the roundtable too. When, there is after the championship, guys are having the postseason meetings with the coaches, and especially the guys who are deciding whether to go or stay. Right, so they're sitting down and talking to the coaches. So I got this secondhand. So Junior goes in to sit down with Jesse Minter. And Jesse said, Junior, this secondhand, so don't take it as an exact quote. But he tells him, you should go to the league. You should go to the pros. Coach is going for one of these NFL jobs. I'm going to go with him, and we're coming to get you. Right? And so the promise fulfilled. So he actually went and got him. And now you're sliding into a defense that actually needs you. So there's an opportunity available right now. You're going to know the defense. The coach is going to know you. Man, you got some beasts up front. I think Junior could have a heck of a rookie season, and I think he'll be in the running for defensive rookie of the year.
Sam, I got a question for you. And you're a Lions fan, right?
Absolutely.
Your whole life. I'm a Lions fan only when I began to hate the Cleveland Browns. And so the question I got is, who are you rooting for this year? I mean, it'll be hard for me not to root for the Vikings. I've always despised the Vikings, but that's going to be a hard one for me. What about the Chargers? I mean, given what Harbaugh, you told the story this morning, or your guest did, about Harbaugh bringing Chris Webber back to a football game, even though the university wasn't so happy about it. I say good for Harbaugh. And it's just another piece of Harbaugh that I found, I like that. And it's going to be hard for me if the Lions are playing the Chargers. Who do I root for? That's a hard one for me.
I'm Lions. I already had this conversation.
You have? Okay.
McCarthy's. Absolutely.
All right.
I will absolutely ride for JJ in every game, but when they play the Lions, can't do it. Now I won't openly root for his destruction, like my other quarterbacks, but I can't root for him in that game. I can't even attend that game. I'll have to watch it at home and root for my Lions to win from home.
Sam, we're in the same division too, so they need to lose some other games besides the Lions.
And I think they will. I think they got better.
Fair point.
They got better. The whole NFC North got better in the draft, but I think that they still are behind the Lions, who got better in the draft as well. But Mikey St. Ristel is an interesting segue here to talk about Michigan portal recruiting, because Mikey St. Ristel, he wasn't totally under the radar. I mean, he was a Power 5 recruit. He was committed to Virginia Tech. But Michigan came calling. Don Brown recruits him to be a DB. He gets here and they say, we want you to be a receiver. And he is a route technician from jump, right? And so then they make this move, fellas, and you'll remember, and I remember vividly questioning Klink, thinking that he was just trying to sell me a dream, when after that first spring with Mikey, he said, man, this dude, we aren't gonna have any drop off from Dax. I was like, stop, man, I don't have a microphone in front of you. You don't have to tell me that. He's like, no. He's gonna be, Mikey, I think we're actually gonna be better at man coverage. Then I was like, now you really trying to tell me some BS, have me out here looking crazy. But he was right. And so fast forward a year to now, you have a vacant corner spot. You have a surplus at receiver, and you have a freak athlete. And so after you do the Mikey thing, I think you think, oh, well, hell, I could do this again. And so Klink recruits Amarion Walker over to corner. And it doesn't go, it's not quite as seamless a transition for a variety of reasons. Number one, you got a dude who, in Mikey St. Ristel, who is maybe the highest IQ player in the last few cycles. I mean, he's just super, super unbelievable. I know football guy, right? And then the other piece of it is Mikey had played extensive defense in high school, whereas Amarion was a spot duty defender in high school. Then Amarion, so the steep learning curve. Then he gets hurt in fall camp, missed 4 or 5 games, and the rest, as they say, is history. So the transition didn't go the same. And I think it has colored people's perceptions of what kind of addition he could be for Michigan on offense as they add him. And of course, the other CJ Charleston to the mix, who is clearly a super depth guy. But the piece that they think they really added is Amarion Walker. I'm curious your take on those two guys.
Oh, the portal is a strange place, man. Kids go for a semester in Oxford and come back a different position or whatever. I think receiver is really hard. I think that if he was just a true junior and had been playing receiver the whole time, he'd probably be the breakout player of the team. But because of the talent, and you could see it when he was out there. But every time he's been on the field, he just looks like he needed a red shirt. There's a guy who he played 4 snaps against Nebraska last year, and that burned his red shirt. And the year before, he burned his red shirt as well. So now he's a true junior, and he's going back to receiver. The talent's there, but he's still basically a freshman, and that's not an easy position to learn. People pretend that receivers you go out and run some routes. No, there's a lot that goes into that position. So I'm not expecting that to be a big thing for this year. Probably a big thing for next year.
Yeah, my thought about Amarion is that in some context, things don't change, and that I'm sure Seth will get this right away, and that there's a profound connection between Amarion Walker and Fielding Yost. That in 1896, Fielding Yost was playing at West Virginia, probably the best player in the country, and then West Virginia had a pedestrian team. And then he was recruited by Lafayette to go play with them for 1 game. And so he went to play Lafayette versus Penn. Lafayette beat Penn and won the national championship. And then Fielding Yost, who was probably the best player on the field, came back and played at West Virginia. And so this is sort of reminiscent, not, he's been 3 months at Mississippi, and now he's back. The similarity is that there were no rules when Fielding Yost was playing, and there are seemingly nothing that looks like rules to me, at least, very much now. Let's hope that Amorian is as successful. I just really don't know. But one thing's for sure, Michigan needed a wide receiver. And you're getting a guy who's been in the system at Michigan, who's played wide receiver at Michigan. So hopefully the transition will be, reasonably seamless for him.
You needed a big target.
And you need a big guy, and he's 6'3", right?
And he's 6'3", so he if nothing else, he can be tall, but we know he's more than just tall. Brian Cook, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to project what Walker is going to be next year, right? Because he was playing defensive back last year. He didn't have a spring here. He was at Ole Miss. I have really no idea what to expect from him. But 6'3" with that athleticism, he's probably gonna be all right. I feel like he's probably going to need another year of polish before he's ready to be a major contributor. But Michigan needs bodies at wide receiver, and he's more than just a body. He's a guy who has a ton of upside. So very happy to get him back, and very happy to see him back at wide receiver.
Well, and along those lines, then Brian, Seth, what about the guy they got from Youngstown State? Is he just a body, or is there something else there? I don't know if you guys. I think Seth, you looked at his tape.
No, he's kind of a slot receiver. They were using him inside outside, but he's kind of small. He's listed at 6 feet, but he's probably like 5'10" or something. He's got really good burst, like a really good acceleration. He's a willing blocker, if not necessarily a good one, but he's stick his head in there. I think that's what they wanted. They wanted a teammate. He's a math major, so he's going to get his Michigan degree, and he's going to be kind of a person who's not 20 years old in the receiver room. Because you look at everybody else, the oldest player they got in there is Tyler Morris, who's a true junior.
I hope he does better at numbers theory than I did.
Yeah, this is Synagoga's guy. He came over from Youngstown State.
Okay,
and so knows the guy, coaches the guy. Gives you a veteran presence in a room that doesn't have that. So this is like, what traits are you missing in that room? Understanding that, as you look around with receivers, and you could see it with the draft commentary, man, it's a tough sell. Getting receivers in this offense, and I look at the ability to get some potential like Amarion's is one that you can't overlook, because that's just there's not an abundance of guys willing to step into an offense where, hey, we're going to be balanced. This is what Michigan is telling. Well, who's your quarterback? Well, we're going to be breaking in a new guy too. It just wasn't the best lure, if you will. And here you have this guy, clearly mostly upside, but upside I think the offensive guys believed in. I talked about this before, fellas. That was one of the areas of disharmony. Like I think the offensive guys were upset that Amarion got flipped to defense, because they felt like he was more likely to reach his potential at corner. And I mean at wide receiver, not to say he didn't have any at corner, but he didn't play that a ton. I know Nick Saban offered him there, but that wasn't his forte in college. So you're gonna take him and put him over there right now, versus if we leave him at receiver in a year when CJ and Roman leave, now we got a guy that's ready to be a super impact guy. That was an area of discontent. But if the head man jumps in and says, we need this dude at corner, and he's telling the media even he's a starter, well, you got to roll with that. So I think this is kind of a course correction along those lines too.
Sure. And Ronnie Bellamy went out of Louisiana, where he's from, and got himself like the most, ridiculous body you could mold into a receiver. That was his dude. That was going to be his recruit, right? This is a guy who he was a free star. He was like a slam dunk that year for my my sleeper of the year when we were doing the recruiting profiles, right? Because you see the talent. Everyone's talking about as soon as this guy gets on the field, it's like, oh, he's 6'3" and he runs like Nico. Okay, I see it. And yeah, they took his dude, man. That was not nice.
But that's what happens on teams. And hey, you can't. If Clink just took, well, look at what he did with Mikey Saber. So that's a compelling case, right?
Yeah.
So those
Same
kinds of
thing
things
happened to Ronnie, by the way. Remember in 1999, he got swapped over to defense because
He
they didn't
did.
have any. Because every no offense to Todd Howard and James Whitley, who are nice guys, but and not the tallest dudes. And
Yeah.
you had some pretty big guys in the Big Ten that year.
Have you guys been able to look at this at the kid from Grand Valley, JVR Suggs? Have you looked at him at all yet?
No.
Okay.
Defensive tackle, right?
Defensive
That's all I
tackle.
know.
Yeah, a little bit of a pivot. Michigan was chasing CJ West, but you're running into a similar circumstance there, kind of like you do a receiver. It's like, man, do you guys throw the ball? Who's the quarterback? A defensive tackle, it's like, well, you got 2 first rounders right there. I mean, how much am I really going to play? Now, my counter would be, look at Chris Jenkins. He just went in the second round. Everyone can get theirs, even if they don't get as many snaps. But this clearly is a sign that CJ West as he's gotten deeper into his recruitment. Other options have really emerged, and options where he would play more than he would play at Michigan. And I think this is a pivot in reaction to that. So,
well, and it's not just the 2 first rounders. You still have Rashawn Benny there too, and he's going to play. So yeah, there's a lot of competition at defensive tackle next year.
Yeah. Hey, good spot to be in for the starters. You wonder from a depth perspective if they are going to be able to go through here in the portal and get and fill out those other spots. So tell me if you guys. So they got to get a DB. So I want to get you guys' perspective on a guy that I said yesterday they should kick the tires with, and I'm hearing they are kicking the tires with. What do you guys think of Jaden Mangum from Michigan State?
Yeah.
Well, we know it's
yeah. On your Falcons, on your Falcons.
Let's start with Brian. Brian, what do you think of Jaden Mangum?
I don't want any secondary players from Mel Tucker's team.
Okay, the secondary is one thing that he was good at.
No, he was awful. Like I don't want anyone who wanted to play for Mel Tucker. Flat out. Like that guy is not wise.
I don't know. I'm
out. I'm out.
Mangum wanted to go to Michigan. Michigan was looking around. They eventually decided they got too many good players. They liked the guys that they were getting.
I mean,
and he fell to State. But he's a good
but
player.
whoa. You can't be like, all right, Michigan isn't going to take me. I'm going to go to Michigan State. What are we doing there? What's the culture?
That's literally everyone who goes to Michigan State, Brian.
No, well, yeah, but I don't want those guys to transfer to Michigan either. Like, I don't want those frat boys on my campus. You stay over there. Like, I mean, whatever. If they think he's a player, he's a player. But fundamentally, like, I'm not.
If Michigan thinks he's a player, I'm happy for him to come here. And but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not ripping on Smarties from Birmingham, Michigan, on my brother's birthday. Happy birthday, bro.
Yeah, they recruited him as an athlete. There was some talk about him being a receiver and being a DB. And Michigan State, I think, prioritized him more earlier. And I think that was they weren't able to overcome that eventually. But he goes there. I tend to offer the guys who played for Mel Tucker and Michigan State under Mel Tucker a little grace and say anything that happened, as long as they have the talent. If they didn't necessarily perform, I'm going to put some of that on Mel Tucker and being at Michigan State.
Here's the thing. Michigan's got the tunnel video. They know exactly who to recruit and who not to.
Yeah.
Like Kerry Crump is in the portal. I don't think we're going for that guy.
Well, so right now, I mean, the word is that he's going to go visit Ohio State first. And so you make it through Ohio State, which I think that they will. Then you got an opportunity. I know Courtney is sniffing, trying to get in there. So I wanted does Keon know that Courtney's looking for another safety? I'd be putting stuff out there like that. If I was, in the business,
I don't think Keon's coming back. Keon's not following Amorion back too.
Another safety. I'd be making that known before the portal window closes. But I digress. I think Michigan is going to be able to get a visit from him, and then we'll see where things go from there.
They do need a defensive back. We do need a defensive back.
They need a couple.
Yeah, that's my impression. So
They need a couple.
they
Man.
got to get.
Yeah, and let me, before we get to a break, you know, they had, obviously they lost DJ Waller. You know, you look at the couple of actual losses that they had. Waller was a loss.
Saab.
Keon Sabb was a loss, and then Jeremiah Beasley. They didn't see that one coming. I mean, you know, there's you just want to go if you're upset about the depth chart at the end of your first spring ball, right? So
yeah, I mean, it's just like, why are we recruiting Belleville anymore? Like, none of those guys play. None of those guys work out. Like, when's the last guy? A guy from Belleville actually was a good college player.
Oh God,
that's a good question.
There you
but
go.
I'm sure they exist.
Like,
it's oh my God, why am I blanking on his name?
I think Damon Payne's
Ian Gold.
about to start for. Yeah, I think Damon Payne's about to start for Bama. I think
Ian Gold from Belleville.
Ian Gold was
Ian
from
Gold.
Belleville.
Yeah,
I mean, but that's like 25 years ago. Like, these guys who, like, they get highly rated and they come out of Belleville and they don't do anything. And I mean, like, there's been this drama between Michigan and Belleville because it's like, why don't these guys go to Michigan? I mean, honestly, at this point, like, why are we recruiting that school?
Yeah, the reasons for the drama are gone. It was a beef between Jim and Crowell. That was what it was, and neither of those guys are here anymore. So
but it is weird that, like, of all the schools out there, everyone's got their big talent producer right down the road, and Michigan's just does not produce any talent for Michigan. Like,
they don't produce talent for anybody. They don't produce talent for anybody.
Don't they have a good quarterback there right now?
Well, Bryce Underwood's at LSU. We'll see if he does anything, and if he doesn't, then I'm like just close the school. All right. There's no reason for Belleville to exist.
No, don't
anymore.
do that. My wife's daughter's about to teach there, so don't do that.
All right.
If I'm Lamar Morgan, I'm getting on Elijah Dotson, who's heading over there. I mean, you know, that recruitment kind of.
Why? What is he gonna do? Is he gonna perform at the college level? I don't think so.
You know, Brian, from one of the most analytical, rational people I've ever met, this is a completely insane view.
All right. I accept that. This is insane. I am insane about this, but like, it's just been this frustration for Michigan fans for years and years.
I can't remember what question I had.
You were like,
Oh, Jeremy.
We were talking about Jeremiah Beasley. It's like,
I was talking about the guys that they lost.
What kind of
he just wanted to go if you're upset about the depth chart at the end of your.
What kind of lunatic do you have to be to leave a school after your first spring practice? Well, where they brought in a starting linebacker from Maryland, and they have Ernest Hausman coming back, and you're mad that you're not starting. Like, what is the thought process there?
What
is the thought process there?
If he doesn't start in Missouri, he can be back at Michigan next week, Brian.
I mean, sure, yeah.
He wasn't bad that he wasn't starting, but he thought he was better than some of the backup guys. Your Pollard,
Jimmy Rolder, who's been there for 3 years.
Wow. Right.
He's not going to be better than Hood. Hood's been there.
Speaking of not being right, look, you know, again, I'm not saying that it was rational. I'm saying that's a sign that something else was bothering them. You know, Klink's gone, Mentor's gone, Harbaugh's gone, Denard's gone. It's like, okay, well, now everything else seems wrong too. If it's like that, then you should go. But my overriding point, before we get to a break, was if those are your only losses, I think you're doing well. I know there's a lot of panic. But the Michigan losing their guys. The other guys that they lost were attrition that I think you kind of expect, that you maybe want. But these ones, I'd say if you didn't lose others that were, like, you didn't lose Jair Hill, and they were coming after Jair pretty hard. You know, so, and that's not the only guy that poaching attempts were going on with. So I think Michigan held on pretty well.
I'm so tired of this. Like when can we fast forward 2 years so that the Kessler settlement happens and that we can actually sign these guys to contracts? Like, this is so.
Amen. Amen.
Like, I don't mind them getting paid, but this whole like transfer portal stuff where like there's no consequence to go into the portal ever is ridiculous. And the one thing that I do think that the NCAA should have stood up and like bang the table about is that, like, it matters that you limit the number of colleges that you're at, because the idea is that these guys get a degree that means something. And I know that that's something that not everybody is going to happen, but if you're transferring every year, that's ridiculous. And I think that the courts that have stepped in and said that that's an illegal restraint of trade or whatever, I don't agree with that. Like, I think the one-time transfer is fine, and then the number 2, you lose a year of eligibility, and that, like, I'm
fine with that, Brian. I know Sam needs to get to a break, but I quickly that's fine. They did it on the wrong end. They punished the players instead of punishing the schools. And
I'm sorry, they should be punishing guys who transfer every year. That's ridiculous.
Well, Frankie Collins,
Frankie Collins should be out of eligibility, flat out. Like,
I was thinking about all the guys who, like, Deion Sanders took there. They were there for like 1 week, and then they transfer, and then they had to use like the courts in order to play. And some of those guys, like, were not able to play. They did have to sit out.
It's okay if you get straight up cut, that's fine. But like, otherwise, like, I'm not, like, these guys who are going to the portal. Like, didn't one of the defensive tackles for Michigan State go in the portal every opportunity he had to go in the portal?
Was that Derek Harmon?
Yeah, Derek Harmon has been in the portal 8 times.
He's still in the portal now, I believe.
Yeah, and is probably going to go somewhere else now for the finally.
I thought it was Barrow, but anyway, yeah.
It doesn't matter. That guy should be on LinkedIn. He should not be in college football anymore. It's ridiculous. Like, I've been an advocate for players for 20 years now.
True.
The pendulum is too far the other way right now, where they have basically no responsibilities. They have no, it's just like, I can go in the portal and I can get, people can bid on me, and then I'll be there for as long as I want to be there. That's not good for college football. And that's the one place where I think the NCAA is accurate in their desires.
Only way to get to what you're talking about is collective bargaining. How do you get there?
Yeah, the biggest mistake ever was when people got their backs up when Northwestern tried to unionize.
Well,
big mistake.
Yep.
All right, we need to get to a break. Mr. Weintraub on the other side could bring up this proposed settlement that in the, the House versus the NCAA. Sure, you guys have read the piece where they're talking about a settlement that would allow a payment of up to $20 million per school to their student athletes. And, whether that is even realistic, I actually think 20 million is a low number in the grand scheme of things. So, but I'm curious, you guys' perspective on that. Can dive into that on the other side with Ira, because I have to go get set up as Justin Joyner is coming in studio. And so we're going to go live with new Michigan assistant basketball coach Justin Joyner at 10:05. So immediately following the roundtable. So be sure, if you get done listening to the roundtable, to jump on over there. If you're listening to us on the radio, we'll play it on the radio tomorrow morning. But more MGoBlog Roundtable on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, The Ticket.
Hey, Brian,
we are clear on the radio.
Did you look at any of Lorenzo Cason's
I shall see you.
I did. I just highlights and stuff. But
oh, shoot.
What?
Sam disappeared.
He's gone.
He
right,
was still on.
So now Sam's in the portal.
No, I thought he seemed pretty impressive. Like, he has a really nasty crossover, and he plays like a point guard. Like, he finds his guys, and I think it's telling that Dusty May was like, this is the guy for my recruiting class I want.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that because he's rated like number 200, and I looked at him too, and his stats are phenomenal. And I mean, he's like 27 points, over 7 rebounds, 6.5 assists.
Yeah, after a certain point in those rankings, it doesn't make a difference anymore.
Yeah,
like, 200 to 600 it just means like, oh, the information we have on this guy is which school he went to.
Yeah. So I saw somewhere online, I don't know if this is true, that he just didn't play AAU.
Okay.
So
that hits her ranking a lot.
That would be a big deal in terms of his ranking. And but it's also telling that he took a visit to Florida, right?
Yeah.
Like Florida was going to take him if they could, and the other guys like Ty Robinson committed to Central Arkansas.
Yeah.
And Elijah Elliott, when the Kid FAU reporter listed his schools, it was Michigan and a bunch of mid majors. So to me, Kason is the guy who, like if there's a John L. Davis in this recruiting class for FAU, it's Kason.
Yeah, I tend to agree. From what I looked at, I haven't seen whole game tapes yet, though, and I don't even know if they're out there. But the all I could come up with is the guy he has no real flair in his game. There's nothing fancy about him. He sort of reminds me of Joe Dumars, right? Who was just like did everything well, but didn't have a lot of fancy stuff in his game. And I think sometimes, remember the football running back that we got here, the kid who did the flip over the defensive back,
Sam McGuffey,
right? Everyone saw that one
guys.
play, right? And just people went crazy over him, right? But he wasn't very big. He was fast. He wasn't big. He in the big picture, he wasn't what I think he was projected to be. And I think a guy like Kason, who has nothing in his game, it's so vanilla that people somehow downgrade him, even though he's incredibly good from what I saw.
I think you're giving them way too much credit for those rankings. The rankings where he's at, they're next to meaningless.
Yeah, that's where Brooks is too. Brooks is in the same range, and
but
Brooks
has
pay
attention up to 50, and then they pay some attention down to 100. They care about that.
Okay. Yeah, Brooks, you can see he has one potential gap in his game. All the rest, Brooks is a good defender, passer, ball handler. He just doesn't shoot it really well so far, from distance at least. He can take it to the rim. And so they just sort of discount him on the national ratings, at least, even though I think he was Mr. Basketball in the state. But Kason doesn't have the shooting issues. And everything else in his game,
About 30 seconds, guys.
What I saw looked pretty solid. So we'll see. What I really like about Kason is how strong he is. And to some extent, it's the same for Brooks. They'll both play through contact. No problem.
Kason is like the perfect Dusty May guy. He's a 6'4" point guard. That's what he gets.
Yeah. Yeah, I like what they've put together. They do need one more guy. They need probably a
Stand by, guys. We're going back on radio in about 10 seconds.
Yeah, they're all guys who are missing one crucial thing for their game. Otherwise, they'd be in the NBA.
And we are back on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTK. The ticket online at WTKA.com. I do want to continue the conversation we just had. You guys were having during the break. I do want to get a little hoops in if we have time, but Brian, you mentioned this before the break. I like your idea. Fast forwarding about 2 years. Is it going to take that long to get to the other end of this? I feel like the latest meetings, I know it hasn't led to anything yet, but I feel like each time we get something, it's like more, a bigger step on the gas pedal to get us to the end. When is that end so we can have a little bit more calm in this world of college sports?
Well, if you aren't up on all the lawsuits, Jeffrey Kessler has 3 at the moment. The big one is the House case, which is asking for essentially back revenues for previous athletes. And they're asking for $1 billion. And if they win, the courts will triple that damage. So it's like a $4 billion judgment that the NCAA is facing. And finally, the NCAA is like, all right, let's talk. So there was an ESPN article out recently that suggested that the end game of this would be approximately $20 million would be available to athletes from the athletic departments as revenue sharing. Now they're positing it as revenue sharing so that the kids aren't employees. But one of the things that we've seen mooted is the fact that there would be contracts signed so that players have to play in bowl games and the like. And once you do that, you're not that far away from a contract that's like, okay, you can't leave.
Yeah.
Unless we come to some sort of mutual agreement about that. So the situation for college sports is right now there's no jurisdiction for the NCAA. They're just bowing out because they know that they'll lose every single court case. And this settlement is a frontier where you can actually see some structure coming back into the sport. And I don't think anybody thinks that the current state of things is what we want to get to at the end of things. So, like, these are very complicated issues. They're like negotiating right now. Kessler doesn't want to say anything. And it's a situation where you get an article now, and then 6 months from now, you'll get another article. And 6 months from now, you'll get another article. And then 6 months from then, you might actually have a framework, because this is going to be a situation where the NCAA is trying to get from a court case a structure that cannot be sued. And that is going to be difficult for them. So there's going to be a lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of negotiating, a lot of figuring out how to make this happen without legislation, without collective bargaining. And that's what the NCAA is trying. They're trying to thread that needle. I don't know if they'll be successful, but it does feel like we're on the horizon where there will be less chaos.
That would be great, but I have a hunch that's at least 5 years away. I mean, the $20 million is interesting. The MAC program I'm familiar with had $25,000. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
NIL money. Where does 20 million come from?
Well, it comes from television. I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't have to spend that money.
Right, I know.
And the MAC programs won't be spending that money, and that's fine. Like, realistically, like, MAC programs are not in a spot where they are exploiting their players, right? Because those programs lose money every year.
Right.
So I don't like, if the MAC players aren't getting paid, that's fine. That's not a problem. Like, the problem is when you have an athletic department like the University of Michigan, which brings in $100 million of revenue annually, and then they spend it all on gold toilets. Like,
yeah. I mean, every step along the way, the NCAA has had an opportunity to create some sort of framework and something that makes sense. And the one thing that makes most sense is, I mean, there's lots of pro leagues out there, and they've all gone through this. Now, Major League Baseball went through it first, and because they did, they got to create a structure that works better for them than anybody else. But NFL has a structure that works really well for them as well. Everyone who's creating a league today wants to be like the NFL structure. And what you need in order to do that is somebody to sit across the table from you. What they have in the House case is somebody sitting across the table. It's not a labor union yet, and that's what they're going to need. But at the moment, they finally have somebody across the table that they can make a deal with, because it's not just, you can't just like get out of these lawsuits by paying a fine, by paying the amount, right? There has to be a structure put in place to get out of the lawsuit because you broke the law, and that's what got you there in the first place. So they have an opportunity, and it's very simple to see what the structure should be. You should have teams be able to keep their players as well as possible. Maybe work with the IRS and say that they don't have to pay taxes if they're at the same university for 3 years. Maybe work with Congress and be able to create and get around some sort of your antitrust laws in order to have the least amount of player movement, because that's what maximizes the value that the colleges can provide. Their education is still a major thing that they're providing. And when you talk about the MAC schools and whatnot, that would get them off the hook, because they're looking at a huge amount of money that they don't have, that they're going to be on the hook for if they want to participate in FBS athletics. So the best thing you could possibly do, I think, if you're creating this structure, is get those kinds of schools off the hook, and at the same time, create an incentive to hold on to your players, an incentive for players to stay at their schools.
Well,
I'm also interested to see how the two NLRB cases, I know that they're private versus public schools, but the NLRB case with USC and Notre Dame, because if they can deem that the NCAA is essentially like the NFL is, as like an overarching organization, that will tie everybody else in. That can allow for that future collective bargaining that you guys are talking about. I don't know how you can get every football player in a room and have them agree on something, because they all have different things that are their needs depending upon their school, et cetera. But we have to get a little closer to having more people on that side of it having a voice. And I don't know if the NLRB cases can push us in that direction or if it's something else, but the athletes do need more say in all this.
I wonder, maybe this is, well, something to be continued, but I wonder how you guys feel about hockey, for example, and baseball. They both have minor leagues, and the NFL has been getting a free ride for a long time because their development league is the NCAA football.
But that's better for everybody.
It is.
Yeah, college sports are way better than minor league baseball. I love minor league baseball. I go to minor league baseball games, and one of the problems with minor league baseball is you never know who your roster is going to be on a daily basis.
True.
You never know who's going to get called up, who's going to get called down, who gets traded around, who's not. Who, get rid of this catcher because we got this new guy coming up, right? And you get excited for a player for a week and then he's gone, and it's really hard to maintain a fan base.
Oh, that's what intercollegiate athletics feels like this month. Guys are here and then they go. Guys,
and they contracted. They contracted the league incredibly. Like a lot of fans who just like their teams don't get to have those teams anymore. College sports is the best minor league system you could possibly have. And now that they're professionalized, they have an opportunity to get some of these guys back. If you don't sign an NFL contract, Prente Jones, you should have the opportunity to come back and be the right tackle at Michigan.
That's another really good discussion.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier in the week. Guys, we're going to have to punt the rest of this conversation until next week. Still a lot to get to with these guys. So we'll bring it back next week once again. More MGoBlog Roundtable next week. Thanks to everybody for listening to the show today. Catch Sam on the YouTube stream in just minutes with another Michigan basketball assistant coach. And we'll see everybody here tomorrow on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK.